Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be around the world. My name is Nayeli. I am the head of student services here at the Hult Shanghai campus. If anybody's having trouble hearing, can you just you can put it in the general chat. And just so you know, the audio is everyone else is muted, but if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat box or the question box, and we will go ahead and answer those at the end of the webinar. So do hold off to your questions because they might get answered throughout the webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and have my colleagues here introduce themselves. We're here with Student Services Tech Team and the Housing Team.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Chan. I'm the Campus Technology Manager here at Hult Shanghai, and it's good to see you all here.
Hi everyone, I'm Sylvia Wang. I'm the Director of Facilities here in Shanghai, and welcome to Shanghai.
Great, so we're going to get started, guys. The idea for this webinar is just to get you some last-minute reminders, some last-minute things that hopefully will be useful for you when, as you're getting ready for your departure. Chris and I are both expats here in Shanghai, so we've been here for a while, and we understand where you're coming from. We've been in your shoes, so hopefully we'll give you some insights. So the first thing we want to talk about is culture awareness. All of these amazing people are waiting for you here in China with arms wide open. It's a very welcoming place for sure. They're very interested and curious and learning about the foreigners that come to China. As you know, China is becoming a leader in the world, so they always want to learn more. One thing to keep in mind is that you should be very open-minded. You will stand out when you come to China. People, if you have blonde eyes, blue eyes, you will definitely stand out and people might stare at you. They're not being creepy by any means, they're just very curious. They want to know where you come from, want to know more about you. So definitely come with an open mind. Do some research before coming to China. Understanding the history, the culture will definitely help you get by. As you know, China has a very large population. In Shanghai alone, we have 23 million people. So personal space is not easy to come around. For me, this was one of the biggest culture shocks, coming and seeing everywhere that I looked a crowd of people. You're never really alone. There's always a lot of people. So embrace it whenever you do have your personal space when you arrive, but don't expect to have much of it when you're here in China. So very important, don't get lost in translation. Put this picture for you guys to get used to seeing all of the Chinese characters everywhere you go. Do learn some basic phrases. Chinese will go a long, long way with people here. They really do appreciate when you do try to communicate with them in their language. Pick up, download an app and pick up a few phrases before you get here. It will definitely be useful because English is very scarce in the city. Taxi drivers don't typically speak English. There's signage around the city that's in English, so that's useful. But the biggest thing that we've heard from students and from people in general is that they came with the idea that everybody would speak English, and this is not the case. Obviously, when you guys come here, you're going to go through your general cultural shock. So you'll be very excited when you get here. You'll be in the honeymoon phase, and then you'll kind of take a little bit of a dip. It's totally normal. You're going to be in a different environment. There's going to be different food. You will get sick the first week or so. Not trying to be negative, but it's just completely normal. It happens, so be prepared for that. Do know that there are Western and Chinese hospital options for you. When you come to Shanghai, you'll get a little booklet with more information regarding the different hospital options that are in the area, and also with your ERIC insurance that you all have as students, you'll be able to go to any of the hospitals. You do have to pay up front usually, and then you will get reimbursed afterwards. So something to keep in mind. Western hospitals are obviously much more expensive than local hospitals. The one thing that is a bit limited here in Shanghai and China in general is just counseling centers. If you do have, if you have normally go to a counselor or, therapy or anything like that, do some research. We've given you a couple of resources here. that are great in Shanghai. SEMA has a list of all, it's a directory basically of all the counseling centers available for you. Community Center also has some resources. But do speak to your therapist or whatnot before you come to China, and you can also set up Skype sessions. I hear those are quite popular. But super important for you to know. In terms of just general health, not everyone is aware, but you should only drink bottled or purified water when you are in China. So as soon as you arrive to Shanghai, make sure you know that you will have some water bottled when you get there. And part of your welcome pack, you'll receive a reusable bottle of water because we are a green campus here in Shanghai. So we want to make sure that we have some filtered water fountains here on campus and at the residence, so you can always use those wherever you need to. Street food is amazing. It's probably my favorite, but just be cautious. Do try it. Try everything that you can, but be aware of the consequences. Unfortunately, it's not, hygiene is not a priority when you're talking about street food. This is the case for any country where you go to eat street food. So just keep that in mind. And the last thing, we really wanted to mention is China is polluted. Pollution levels do tend to rise, particularly during the winter time. So December, January, February are probably at their peak. It affects people very differently. Personally, I'm usually not affected by it at all. But if you feel that if you do have any type of respiratory problems or asthma or anything like that, or you do like to do a lot of sports outside, do keep that in mind. There are masks that you can buy. You can buy them, here in Shanghai, or you can bring some from abroad if you wish. It'd probably be more expensive abroad. But we put a picture of it just so you can have an idea. 3M is probably the best one because it has a filter as well. Another thing that students have done in the past is they buy air purifiers when they arrive to Shanghai, and they put them in their room. Again, nothing to be, not to be scared of or anything. 23 million people live here and everyone is fine. But if you're extra sensitive, it is going to be a shock to your system at some point. So just keep it in mind and be prepared for it. I'm going to hand it over to Chris, who's going to talk about technology.
All right, guys. Hi, how's it going? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the technology here in China. It is a very challenging environment here for technology, especially when it comes to the internet, but also when it comes to some of the mobile phone technology that's used here. So we'll go over much of that. First thing to know is that the internet in China is, of course, censored. You've probably heard this before. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Google, these are all websites that are completely blocked in China. However, what you may not know is that the censorship extends far beyond just the blocked websites, and that your connection to any website can be blocked at any time if for some reason the censors think there's something wrong with it. So in order to get around this, in order to maintain a stable internet connection, you will need to purchase a VPN. And the VPN that we recommend is Astral VPN. We found it's the most reliable and the most agile and adaptable when it comes to the changing Chinese internet environment. We also recommend that you install Astral in your home country before you arrive in China, as it'll be much easier to do. Now, VPN will gain you access to the blocked websites, but it will not make your internet fast. All right, the connection speed between the Chinese internet and the international websites is extremely slow, and it's infamously slow, if you will. And the reason for that is because the Chinese internet was built for the local Chinese, and the majority of them never browse beyond the borders of China. And so the internet within China is extremely fast, but when you try to go abroad with your internet connection, it's going to get very slow. And you may think that this is very inconvenient for all of us expats here, and it really is. We have a hard time getting to our banking websites, our news websites, all that good stuff, Facebook, even with VPN on. But keep in mind something. I'm going to throw a couple numbers at you guys right now. So the first is 600,000. This is the number of expats living in China as of the 2010 Chinese census. All right, so that's expats living in China. This next number here is the number of Chinese citizens in China. All right, you can see it is much, much larger. You don't really get an idea of the scales we're talking about until you see these kinds of numbers on paper. And so if you think the Chinese government cares about the 600,000 expats living in China, unfortunately you're wrong. They don't really care that much about us. Okay, they care a lot more about the 1.4 billion Chinese citizens that they have to worry about. And so if the internet's a little bit slow for us, so be it. Now, in order to study here in Hult Shanghai, you do have to have a laptop with a full version of Windows or Mac operating system. Something like a Chromebook, which is running Chrome, or the Surface 2 that runs Windows RT, these are not acceptable in Hult Shanghai. And the reason is because they're very limited when it comes to VPN options, and we cannot install VPNs on them. Or the VPNs that are able to be installed on them are blocked by the Chinese government, and there's just no way around it. So do make sure you have a laptop with at least full version of Windows 7, Windows 8, or Mac operating system. And finally, I mentioned earlier about the cell phone technologies here in China. Unfortunately, many international cell phones from your home countries will not work here. And the main reason for that is because the 3G technology in China is very, very unique, and a lot of it is only used in China. To maximize your odds, you should get a phone that supports WCDMA for 3G. There is one carrier in China that uses WCDMA. Their name is China Unicom. And WCDMA is the only technology, 3G technology in China that is used elsewhere in the world. For 4G, make sure your phone is able to support FDD-LTE. All right. Now, a couple of useful apps to have in China include Astral, as we mentioned earlier. This is the VPN. WeChat is also very, very popular here. It's an instant messaging app, and most of our students will use WeChat to keep in touch with each other. Smart Shanghai is also a great resource for knowing what's going on in Shanghai, as well as looking up restaurants, venues, bars, things like that. So that's another great app to have on your phone. It also has a taxi function. So you can just use the taxi function, pull up a venue or a bar, and it'll display the address in Chinese, and you can just show that to a taxi driver. Also, as Nayeli mentioned earlier, you should download some kind of Chinese translation app or Chinese dictionary, and we recommend the Plico Chinese Dictionary. Now, just a little bit about money here in China. You should definitely let your bank know that you will be in China. The reason for this is if they start seeing some strange transactions on your ATM card and things like that, they will block it. And so let them know that you will be in China, you will be here for at least a year, and not to sort of block that kind of suspicious activity. You should probably do the same for your credit cards. I know when I first came to China, I didn't do that, and my credit card was blocked within a week. And I had to call them, pay international fees, even though it was a 1-800 number, and get them to remove that. You can open a bank account on arrival. Just make sure when you go to the bank that you bring your passport. You will need it for almost every official transaction you do in China. So it's a good idea to remember that at all times. And also bring at least 100 US dollars worth of money on arrival. You will need some cash when you arrive at the airport, at the very least to take the taxi to come into the city center, as the airports are very, very far away.
You can, just on a side note there, you can use the ATM here in China. One of the current students mentioned when we were asking for advice, he said that on the departures gate, there is several ATMs that are to accept more foreign bank cards. So as long as you've let your bank know and you feel comfortable, you can also just use the ATM when you get here. But if you're, like me, and you kind of want to make sure you have money and not risk it, then just exchange them before you get here.
All right, great. And there's a picture of some Chinese money, just so you get a little bit more familiar with it.
Yeah, so we just put a little note here. There is a lot of counterfeit money, obviously, like not only in China, it happens everywhere. But there are some ways to tell if you have counterfeit, and one of this is the watermark on the 100 RMB note. So when you come to Shanghai, we can ask anybody that lives here in China already, any of the staff, and we'll be able to help you identify if it's a fake one or not. Hopefully you won't get any.
Yeah, let's hope. All right, and then just to give you an idea of how much it costs to live in Shanghai, we posted some various normal expenses that you might run across while you're living here. A meal at an inexpensive restaurant will average you around 30 RMB. Meal for two at a nicer restaurant, 3-course meal, will probably be around 150 to 300 RMB. A meal at McDonald's, if you get the full combo, to be about 25 to 40 RMB. And then there's some beer prices there for you, as well as Coke and water. Just for your information, just to give you an idea of the prices here. Here we've got some more, I guess, groceries. So we have milk, bread, eggs, cheese, etc., etc. As you can see, cheese is quite expensive in China. That's because cheese is rather rare in China. Chinese people don't eat that much cheese, and so most of the cheese here is imported. And so that brings up a good point. Most of the foreign foods that you buy in China are going to be quite expensive, probably more expensive than in your home country because it's all imported here. Whereas things like apples, tomatoes, eggs, those are all things Chinese people eat, and those are actually probably going to be cheaper than your home countries.
You can definitely find local grocery stores as well as Western grocery stores, where, as Chris mentioned, prices will be probably around double. But if people want to have the option to, eat what they miss from home, you definitely will have that available. Just be a lot more expensive. So keep that in mind when you're doing your budgets.
Great. And finally, just a couple of examples of how much it costs to get around Shanghai. The metro for one way is usually for about 3 to 4 RMB. If you're traveling a little bit farther, that's okay. The maximum fare on the metro is 7 RMB. So it's really quite cheap. Taxis, they start at 14 RMB and go up from there. At night, they are a little bit more expensive at 18 RMB, but still that's less than $3 US. And then a taxi per mile is about 5 RMB per mile. So hopefully that gives you guys a good idea of how much it costs to live in Shanghai, to eat in Shanghai, to cook in Shanghai, and to get around in Shanghai. And then now we'll pass it on to Sylvia, Director of Facilities, and she'll talk to you more about transportation and some other things.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I guess that was a good transition to this topic, talking about transportation here in Shanghai. So we do have an extensive metro system, and English signage is pretty much everywhere. And taxis are pretty affordable here in Shanghai. I guess that's a very good thing about Shanghai. But the only thing is it might not be very easy to get during rush hours. The alternative is to use Uber. A lot of expats in Shanghai are using that. It's working pretty well. Also, if you plan to travel during your module breaks, please keep in mind that if it's public holiday or national holiday everywhere in China, let's say outside of Shanghai, the other cities, that will be pretty much, that will be very, very crowded and packed. So if you want to book train tickets, flight tickets, please plan far in advance and then be prepared for the big crowds everywhere. So a lot of you might be wondering what to bring to Shanghai. Just a couple tips on that. First of all, please bring enough of your favorite toiletries and personal hygiene and medication, prescription and over-the-counter. That's just because you might not be able to find any of them here in Shanghai. Also, please keep in mind that clothing and shoe sizes are very different here. We do have Zara, H&M, and those big international chains here in Shanghai, but just keep in mind that a lot of collections are still tailor-made for the Chinese market. If you want to know a detailed list of items provided at the residence, please check my Hult. Okay, so I think I'll just pass it back to Nayeli.
Great, thank you, Sylvia. So, so far we've kind of given you an idea of how to prepare before your arrival, what to pack, what to expect with the internet, how to keep yourself healthy, and so on and so forth. Now let's imagine that these are your first 30 minutes in Shanghai. So welcome to Shanghai. This is an image here of the airport signage at the very top. So as you see, everything will be in English as well as Chinese. So don't be scared. You'll be fine. One of the main tips. So we asked some students and alumni, and they gave us these top 10 tips. One of the main things that they told us is make sure you tell people to take an official cab from the airport. As soon as you arrive, as soon as you go through the arrival gates, there will be people coming up to you saying, taxi, taxi, taxi cab, in all forms and sorts of ways. Just, ignore and proceed, follow the signage. If you arrive to Pudong Airport, you'll need to take the elevator. down, and then you'll just exit and you'll follow where it says taxi queue. Depending on the time of day that you arrive, there might be a massive, massive line, but it will go by really fast, actually, because there are a lot of taxis that are coming. So don't get discouraged and wait for an official cab. Another thing is, don't purchase a SIM card at the airport. You will get approached as well. People will say, you know, buy your SIM card. The reason we say don't do it at this particular point is because the SIM cards that they sell might not be real, they might be fake, or they might already be in use by someone else. So do hold on to that. You will, the residence does, the housing team, they do some trips to the local China Unicom, as Chris mentioned, or China Mobile, where you will be able to get your SIM card then. Obviously, as long as you have, if you brought your phone, obviously make sure it's a compatible phone, as Chris mentioned earlier, then you'll be able to do that then. The other thing is, if you go on My Hult, you'll see the address card. Make sure you print that and carry it with you. You know, as we mentioned a few times throughout this presentation, taxi drivers do not speak English, so you'll need to show them the address with Chinese characters. You know, if you show them something that says the address in Pinyin, most of the time they won't actually understand. It must be in Chinese characters. So keep that in mind. The other thing that students were very adamant about was networking. So, you know, your year at Hult is all about meeting people from all over the world and, you know, really taking advantage of that. The only thing is that you don't have enough time, really. It's 1 year goes by super fast, and 8 months goes even faster if you plan to rotate. So start connecting with people before you get to Shanghai. There's a Facebook group, there's a WeChat group, and there's a WhatsApp group that I believe students have created. So do start, you know, get to know each other before you get here. You will be each other's family while you are in Shanghai. Believe it or not, all of the classes, they really become a whole Shanghai family. You're here to support each other, so good to get to know before you arrive. But not only the people that you're going to be with, but go outside those borders. And, you know, if you are interested in sports or volunteering or in a particular company, do your research before you get here. You will be very busy with your studies, so, you know, try to do that ahead of time. It's important that while you have a good Hult Shanghai family, that you also get out of the Hult bubble, as we call it, and really take advantage of meeting, you know, local Shanghainese, Chinese people, or other expats that are living here. Will really help you with your career building after you graduate. As like I said, 12 months go by very, very fast.
Okay, so just to summarize, that China is very, very different from the rest of the world. So to you, every day will be an adventure here. One unique thing about China is all processes take longer, so please be patient. And then with that being said, you will be facing a lot of challenges during your stay here in Shanghai, and all you need to do is to embrace them. And then get ready for a great year ahead. So just 2 quick reminders for the residents. If you haven't provided us with your arrival information, please do so that we can better assist you upon checking. So you should have already received this email with an online form link to provide your arrival information, so please do so. Earliest tracking dates for MBA will be August the 31st, and then for MIB, September the 7th.
Great, guys. So we hope that this was useful. We're going to open it up for questions now. If you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and post them on to the chat. We'll answer them for you. Some of the questions we had earlier this morning were in regards to a bank account. You don't have to open a local bank account if you don't want to. It's suggested because it makes things a lot easier, especially if you want to join the millions of people that do online shopping on Taobao, which is a very, very cheap website. You will need a local bank account for that. Other questions that came across were about the contracts. So Sylvia mentioned earlier that you should have all received your contracts. If you haven't already, you can definitely email the housing team or student services, and we will direct you to where you can find that. Keep in mind, obviously, that we also need the arrival dates, because the housing team wants to be prepared to greet you, wants to make sure that you are there that they're there for you whenever you arrive and to take care of you. Okay, we have a question here from Nathaniel. Thank you very much. It says, do you have any idea when we'll be able to travel abroad, as in when we will have to set up multiple entry visas? Exactly. So that's a great question, actually. Something that you should all remember is that when you get here, we need to complete your visa process. Therefore, we will have your passport for the process might take, as long as 40 days. So the first holiday that you have is in October. It's the first week of October, which is called Golden Week. Do not necessarily plan to leave the country or travel actually outside of Shanghai, because you might not have your passport back. So you will have plenty of opportunities to travel abroad. There'll be long weekends, there'll be module breaks, and if you plan ahead of time, you'll be able to take advantage of good deals traveling within Asia. On my Hult, you will be posting all the schedule and the holidays and so on, so you'll be able to plan ahead as well. So thank you for asking that question, Nathaniel. Okay, we have another question. How much for a cab from the airport to the resident?
It's usually, I think it's around 150 to 180, depending on traffic.
Depending on traffic and the time of day you arrive.
Exactly.
So at night, it'll probably be closer to 200, 250.
Because we do have this evening rate after 11 p.m.
Right. So it really depends on, if you arrive after 11, it'll be a little bit more expensive, so do be prepared for that.
Right.
All right, great. Do we have any more questions, guys?
No. Okay. You will know your class schedules. When will you know your class schedules? So that's another great question, Nathaniel. So you will have access to your class schedules when you arrive. So you'll be able to access your My Courses.
Right. You'll get access to My Courses after registration, at which point you'll be enrolled in all of the courses in our learning management system, and you'll be able to see all the schedules then.
So you'll have some training with Chris here and his team on how to navigate it.
Yeah, we will train you on how to use My Courses, and we'll help you get your calendars all set up and all that great stuff. So don't worry about that.
So yes, it'll be when you arrive. Trying to think of other questions that people have had in the past. One thing that we definitely want to stress enough is about making sure you bring enough over-the-counter prescription medication. I think that's been a problem for some students. Do your research. Know what you need to have. You definitely won't find the same medication here in Shanghai, in China.
Even just like Panadol. Whenever I go abroad, I bring a couple boxes back.
Exactly, over the counter as well. Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of questions that you might have or come up with. Feel free to send us an email either to student services, to the tech team, or to the housing team. Browse on My Hult. We're happy to help you with whatever we can before you get here.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
All right, guys.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot, guys. It's great having you on our webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. So take care.
Bye.
Bye.